This is exactly what I've been waiting for. This is exactly, I don't mean to sound like Cat Williams, but this is exactly what I've been waiting for.
The Sockjig Sneaker Podcast has the best legs in a business built for kicks. Welcome to episode 48 of the Sockjig Sneaker Podcast. I'm your host, Sockjig. You can follow me on Twitter at Sockjig and on Instagram as well. We have a special episode today. My guest is Jean-Michel Lemieux, aka JM Wind on Twitter. He is the former CTO at Shopify before leaving that post in April of 2021. And he's responsible for ushering in the era of bot protection on Shopify Drops, which we all know and love or hate as sneakerheads. So we talk about that. We talk about Shopify landing Supreme as a customer, and he tells us exactly how long that took and how it required almost a complete rewrite of checkout. And from there, we get into kind of a technical discussion about how software architecture and how rewrites of key layers happen and how that's approached from both a product manager and a dev approach. You know, it doesn't get overly technical and it might get a little bit nerdy, but it was kind of relevant since that's all the work that was required to not only land a customer like Supreme, but to set up Shopify for the next 10 years or so. So, you know, I'm a believer that you got to be yourself in interviews, and I'm a developer, so some of these questions I just had to ask as a dev. We also go into the early days of anti-bot protection in Shopify, how it went from nothing back in 2016, 2017 to the, domain switch drops that we have now. And overall, I ask a lot of questions about Shopify as a platform. And what that means is like, what makes the cut of what goes into Shopify that is available to all customers, or what is available to, premium customers in Shopify Plus, and what is not. For example, Antibot is a part of Shopify Plus, the premium tier. So I ask questions around that and why is it not available to regular lower tiered customers. And I also ask about why Raffles are not part of any tier and not part of Shopify platform. We also talk about his approach to sneaker Twitter and how he was friendly with bot developers and the community in large. And, a whole lot more. Up front, I also want to give some definitions for some words that we use in the interview. I use a lot of Shopify terminology just so it was, easy to converse. So when I say flash sales is what Shopify uses for hyped drops, where a lot of people are coming in and stock might be limited, and usually that's when anti-bot protection is kicked in. Merchant, that's obvious, that's a store on Shopify. That's just the term that they use. AWS, if I use that, that's Amazon Web Services. That's a data center that Amazon hosts that, most of tech runs on. And if JML says the word core at any point, core means like the core platform. And finally, when talking about Supreme, we mentioned Splay. Splay was the development company that Supreme used. So great interview. I'm excited for you to listen. But before that, I have some socks to drop right now. Sockjig socks are available right now in a dark navy blue with a neon yellow text on it, or electric lime as I'm calling it. It's kind of a Seahawks colorway, but the socks are no way affiliated with the Seattle Seahawks, other than me living in the Pacific Northwest. So they're available right now at shop.sockjig.com. The password is electric, just the word electric, all lowercase, shop.sockjig.com. So pause the podcast, go enter the word electric, grab your socks. And as I said on the last podcast, the support means a lot to me. Whether you've bought one sock or bought them all, or you bought a couple, even if you've never bought one before, but you listen, consider buying this one and you're good for a while. You get hours of sneaker podcasts for the year and you get a pair of socks out of it. And these new ribbed ones really are the best socks that I've made so far. So, there's always time to become a new member of Team Jig. So available right now at shop.sockjig.com. The password is electric. And now on to our guest. Okay, my guest today, you may know from his interactions with both sneakerheads and bot developers on sneaker Twitter. He is the former CTO of Shopify. Welcome, Jean-Michel Lemieux. Jean-Michel, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good. Thanks for having me. This is going to be fun.
It's an honor to have you here. So how's it been for you since you've left the CTO position at Shopify? What have you been up to?
It's been interesting. I think I had the same job for 30 years, when I say same job, I'm kind of not even joking. Like went to university, became a software developer, spent 30 years building software and teams, and then I this mental picture in my head of like at some point before something bad happens to me, and I've had some family health things. I'm like, I've got to try some different things,
Yeah.
flex some other muscles that I have. And my kids are in university now, so it's like empty house, can live wherever I want. Let's go take advantage of it. So my wife and I kind of had some plans and stuff like that. So I think the last 18 months have been, try all these things that have been on my to-do list for a while, in terms of one, helping a lot of people. So I'm helping a lot of, would-be CTOs, writing a book about that. My wife and I have a restaurant and an event center, and just and we're founding a small company as well. So just got to have my hands in a lot of different things after that 30 years of, I'd say, doing the same thing, which was very rewarding, but it was the same role for 30 years, and kind of enjoying and trying to stretch and try some things where I kind of suck at it a bit and feel what it's like to be a beginner in a bunch of things. So that's kind of where I'm at. And hopefully many more years to come, but that's what the last 18 months have been.
Oh, that's great. I remember at the time when you were leaving, the talk on Sneaker Twitter was you are leaving Shopify to code a sneaker bot. How is that going? Have you built the ultimate Shopify sneaker bot?
uh, it was funny. So one of the things I did do after I left is, so I've never personally run a bot. Everyone's like, yeah, I must. I'm like, I had this thing where like, if I'm on the other side of the fence, like I have to kind of stay legitimate and like I'm really on the other side of the fence, right?
I
I'm
always use the
trying to
term
create a
white
platform.
hat and black hat. So
Yeah,
if
maybe that's it. Yeah,
you're wearing the white hat, you're not putting on the
whatever.
black hat.
Now I might have had people on my team who ran bots, but I personally never. So when I left Shopify, I pinged CyberSoul, my friends at CyberSoul, Lucas, and I was like, hey Lucas, give me a license to CyberSoul. Let me try this thing. And honestly, like, as I said, like I'm busy. Like I always have 20 million projects on the go, and that one was, I got CyberSoul set up. Oh fuck, it runs on Windows. I get my Windows laptop. I got it running. I need product, and then I was like, oh, I have to be around for when the drop runs or something. Oh, I can automate it. And anyway, so I went through everything kind of, and I'm like, oh, I missed the release. I was golfing. I missed the release or whatever. Like so it. I never did. I had CyberSoul. I have a like for life license from Lucas. Great guy gave me one. And I said, I've got to try this. And at some point I was like, maybe I should like YouTube live stream this on YouTube or something. I
Yeah,
never got
people
to. I don't know if I should admit this. Maybe I should have worked harder at it, but I never finished that homework assignment.
people are going to tune into your live stream to see just how bad you are at botting.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, there's a lot. I mean, yeah, to do it well, you got to know your shit, right?
Yeah.
So.
So I have some questions about your time at Shopify, mostly related to sneaker stuff and anti-bot stuff. So, sometimes we might delve into dev type questions because I'm a developer myself as well. Some disclaimers I wanted to put out just for the audience in the beginning. You can talk about what you can talk about, what you are able to. Some stuff may be privileged, and I'm aware of that. I'm not sure exactly what is privileged and what is not, but if I get on that boundary, you can answer accordingly. And there may have things that have been changed since you've left
I
that
mean, what's the
obviously,
worst that can happen? I'm going to get fired from what exactly?
or I don't know, or the transcript shows up in a court case is probably the
Yeah,
worst
fair
thing.
enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay.
It's kind of like in tech they do these safe harbor statements. It's kind of the opposite of that. It's like you know things may have changed since you've left.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
First off, I wanted to ask about Shopify recently landed Supreme as a client. Was that underway when you were still there? I'm kind of like asking like how long has that been in the works?
Yeah, I mean, I went to New York City several times, and to kind of, there's a lot of conversations before that happened, obviously, right? Both conversations around, what they wanted to do strategically, where they're going as a company. As a brand, they've been around for a while, and I had both legacy technology, legacy. Well, I'd say like legacy, not in a bad way, but they've they had tech stack with Splay, as you know, and they had a bunch of things. So there's obviously a lot of conversations about that. And I don't think there's no, I don't know, like we talked about this, right? Like it's like any big customer you land, like we had conversations. So it did start, might have started 4 years ago. What are we now? Like 2023, like probably
Wow,
four
four
years. But
years.
it was a big decision for them, obviously, right? Like this was not a let's just migrate to some, like there's conversation about how and why, and obviously the brand's important, um, and all that, right? And like any of the big retailers that we had at Shopify, like name any of the big ones, right? Like in Australia, JB Hi-Fi, we have like electronics store we have the entire platform. Like that was, a long-term relationship. Like I get to meet them, and we have a plan about how we're going to make that happen. And I think, Supreme, probably took a bit longer, but I think, did I like Supreme was purchased by, anyway, there's some things
Yeah,
where Supreme was purchased by a holding
VF
company. And then,
Corp purchased Supreme,
yeah, so
which
I think there
owns.
was some, org things, et cetera, that obviously happened that probably changed things. And I think, I haven't been in touch with, I was always curious. I'm like, I hope they're going to launch soon, because we spent a lot of time on that, and we're pretty excited about it. And, obviously I didn't ask to put anybody in a bad situation or anything, but it was actually, I learned about it when I think Lucas pinged me or something about, hey, did you know this? And I'm like, oh, finally. That was, it was good to see. I think it was, at the time for us was, it was kind of a perfect fit, in some ways. Like we'd been training in the gym for flash sales forever. And, if you guys had participated in any of the, like that sneaker drop that I did for charity, right, where we donated, I
Sneaker
bought a bunch of
trees.
sneakers. I think, sneaker trees. Yeah. Man, it was a long time ago. Anyway, so sneakers, he bought a bunch of trees, sneakers, etc. Like that was basically testing out a bunch of new code and platform, like new checkout, new queue, blah, blah, like all the new stuff that Supreme has today. That was the first time it was used in production.
So was
Like
that like
that's the
an
entire
alpha
reason
or
for that
beta
launch.
version?
Yeah. So actually, here's the background of why Sneaker Trees happened was, well, there was Sneaker Trees, which was the fundraiser, but then there was also, did I call it Sneaker Trees? Maybe Sneaker Trees 2, which was the actual release of hype sneakers at retail cost, and
Right.
that all went to charity as well. Now, that was because it was too risky for us to use an actual merchant with all the new like systems that we had, like basically the new checkout, et cetera, et cetera. Like it was all from scratch, and we're like, do we give that to like a large scale merchant going, hey, try this out? Like we haven't tried, like we've simulated it, but like how do we try it, right? Like how do you try it for real? Like there's a lot that goes into, like you can simulate, but then when it happens for real, there's a lot of things you haven't seen. So that the whole purpose was that for to actually try the things out. So if you
You
think
needed
about
a
like the
flash sale.
timeline of Supreme, yeah, there was like there's conversations. There was literally the Sneaker Trees launch was to prep for Supreme, and then they launched a couple weeks ago, which was fascinating. Like the team had a lot of people worked really hard to make that happen, and they're really proud of everyone. And I think didn't the first Thursday launch, it went pretty good, last week.
It was the final week of the year for them, and it was kind of like the things that the leftovers. So
Oh,
it
was
was
it? Okay, it
hard to
wasn't a
gauge
big.
exactly
Okay.
how drops will go. I know there was like an age capture, a checkpoint.
Mm,
I don't think there was a queue, but there was nothing hyped dropping where, say, a lot of
okay.
bots or people would go in. I think anyone who wanted it had a smooth checkout. I think it dropped like
Gotcha.
5 minutes late. That was the only other notable thing, or there was no Apple
Mm.
Pay was the other notable thing. So things like
Yeah,
that might
that's yeah,
change
yeah,
going forward. I'm not sure.
yeah. Sounds good.
So you took the results from Sneaker Trees, and did you then like present them to Supreme? Because I assume you needed a flash sale. You needed something where a lot of people were coming in. You couldn't just kind of simulate the same thing, like you said, with some random vinyl release
Well,
of a record or
yeah. I mean,
something.
I think since then we within Shopify we really built out a simulation environment for flash sales, which was really important. I think we had a rudimentary one, where you can just generate, HTTP requests, and build some scripting library. We had kind of like load generation, but to have a more like reliable, etc. So we actually built that out, and we would actually show, like a lot of our merchants, not just Supreme, but all the other big ones like Jeffree Star and Gymshark, etc. Like we show them results like every month. Hey, here's how we pushed a platform. Here's what we see. Like showing analytics and kind of earning their trust. So that kind of, I assume that's still going on. Like I haven't checked in a little while, but that was, I think part of our plan was when you're building a big software stack is to, yeah, like make sure you can test it yourself. And I think the way the internet works, sometimes it's really hard to set up environments that actually simulate, like, again, like do we launch our own bots? How do we simulate traffic? How like what endpoints are people hitting? Like it's actually, it's one, it's expensive because we have to provision all this and actually simulate a million people buying things. So, but I think that's our goal was to have that in place so that we can confidently go to new customers and go, here's what our platform can do, and we're going to stand behind it. Versus being surprised with some launches here and there.
I think you said in a tweet too that you required kind of almost a rebuild or rewrite of checkout, going from sync to async. Was this like a rewrite of the entire platform almost, of the entire checkout process?
Checkout got rewritten from the ground up.
Yeah. And
Like
so,
literally almost every line of code. I mean, checkout does a lot of things if you like, but the core concept of checkout being there's a contract generated between a buyer and the merchant, like that process of negotiating the contract and having that stored. Now there's a lot of things like, like how do you fetch shipping rates and payment providers? Like, so I'd say some of that, like, didn't change that much, but I think that like the core checkout platform had a new, like we had a new, we learned a lot. We had a new design, a new way of doing it that would be like a lot more scalable. And then, I think we changed our order models as a result. I mean, and that's just going back to like, I think what it's like to be like a software engineer is, you write software once and you have a view of the world, and that has to evolve. It's going to evolve over time as you learn more things. And I think what I loved about the profession of being an engineer and a software developer was, do you have the, do you have the endurance to kind of keep evolving it as you go, as you learn new things, and as your software gets, I'd say older, like it ages, it takes more effort to do that, right? You have things that are ingrained. It's kind of like a human, we have our habits after a while. It's hard to
right.
break them. And software is almost like that. We have your habits. You have habits of like the skill set of the team. They know the existing code. And then what do you see in terms of like, how's your market evolving? What do you learn about the space? And can you actually make those changes? And I think, like Shopify's like we were really good, and they continue to be really good at, embracing the new learnings, and when it makes sense, rejigging, rewriting, etc. I think I was really proud of doing that. And those are hard things to do, but I think they pay off long term. And I think companies that can do that really well end up surviving longer than others do. So, as you can tell, I'm pretty excited. I think that's a big, like, I really love doing that. And I hate rewriting software because it could be the worst mistake and the costly mistake.
Right.
Because software that runs that's doing it, like, don't touch it, right? Like, it's expensive to have developers like write something from scratch. So um, I think that one for us, like, especially because checkout is Shopify, like that's kind of like the most important part of Shopify is we want to make sure we had a checkout ready for the next 20 years, and hence the rewrite, and hence having some customers that scared the crap out of us that were going to be the ones that we're going to show that we could have the best checkout on the planet.
Was scale the number one reason for the rewrite, that you needed to support these flash sellers? Because
No,
like 99% of merchants do not require the scale of a Supreme or a Foot Locker or Nike of millions of users at the same time. Or was
yeah,
it
that's a
just a
good
matter of
question.
getting the code right?
It's a good question. It's kind of like Formula One. So you're like, why the hell do we have these like supercars that are like racing once a week? That like no one has those cars, right? Like no one drives an actual F1 car around the street. But what happens though is the technology evolution and innovations that happen as they're kind of like trying to build the best car on the planet, right? They're doing, wind resistance testing. We have wind tunnels. We have, fuel efficiency. We have, tire technology, like everything. Like that all trickles down into the cars that we have today. And I'd see checkout as the same thing, which is we wanted an F1 version of checkout. And as, the things we're going to learn from that are going to trickle down into every part of Shopify, and are going to make everything better for every merchant, right? Whether you're in the F1 or you're not, it kind of doesn't matter. Like it trickles down. So I think that was our philosophy: is we want an F1 version of checkout, and we'll give those to the actual companies who are, in the F1 category. And as you said, there's not that many, but there's some that are really interesting, and we love, almost showing that we had the technology and the smarts to do that. But on the flip side, there's a lot of other things that happen, right? We have trickle down technology and innovations that made all the Shopify better. The checkout code itself, one of the big goals was to make checkout easier to work on by more people. So, if you think about what checkout does, right? It takes, a customer's coming in and buying something, and it has to create an order out of that. Now that order, if you think about like everything has to connect into checkout. It's kind of like the glue in Shopify, like shipping rates, taxes, delivery options, etc. Like there's a lot of developers and a lot of teams that had to contribute to checkout, and it was getting complicated, a bit error prone, and it was just hard to work in. And then checkout as well had to be flexible. We had to support subscriptions. We had to support, like down payments. We had to support installment. Like all that had to be built into checkout. So for us, because checkout's the glue, it was not only built for the F1 and supercars and flash sales, but it was built for a sustainable engineering org to be able to work on checkout and add more features to Shopify over the long term. So, so I think those two reasons were like, I guess, a catalyst for I guess spending so much time and money on that initiative.
I know you're writing a book about some of this, and I think you made a Twitter thread about something very similar about, I think you called it layeritis of
Layerinitis.
layerinitis. Well, I forgot the end.
Layerinitis, yeah.
So, apologies. We're talking dev stuff here. It's just dev to dev talking here.
Yeah. We went from sneakers to software, all in the same sentence.
So it's like when in software architecture, when you're building layer and layer on layer, eventually, you're kind of worried it'll topple over and it's harder to work with. And kind of what you were saying. And then you said that, we needed a rewrite. We need to rebuild it. Was that coming from you? Because a lot of the times it's usually like people on your team saying this is getting harder to work with. And then you got to convince management that we got to rewrite this. And someone else is saying, why do we got to rewrite this? But the way you're talking, it seems like it was more of a kind of a group decision. How did that go? And how was that kind of decided?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's obviously it's kind of a group decision, but I don't think it was easy. I think easy in the sense that there's a lot of pressure on checkout. Like there's a lot of features that we needed, and it's kind of, as you said, why do you add features for like your top 1% of the merchants, right? Like not everyone has flash sales, but at the same time, we're like, there's a lot of pressure. Let's add this one feature, this one feature. We need subscriptions, we need this. And I think after a while, the teams just want to say yes. Like these are all good things to be done. And I think what happened is, the team's like, hey, Toby, Jean-Michel, leadership, whatever, like we should talk about this. And I think we had, at the time, we probably tried a couple, like, can we fit this in the checkout or not? And I'd say Toby, the CEO of Shopify, is a great advocate for engineering investments. So I think at some point he's got a really good long-term mind and investment. And then, a bunch of things happen. And I remember we're in a room, like 6 years ago, and looking at all the reasons and looking at, would Shopify be a better company in 10 years if we made this investment? And I think we kind of all looked at each other and said, yeah, we think so. And then we're like, cool, okay, what's proof point number one? Okay, go. So after that decision was a lot of prototyping, because I think even if you've been in the industry for a while, like I don't trust anything
Yeah, you got to
outside
show
of
proof
code,
of
right?
concept.
So it's like, bullshit walks, code talks kind of thing. So show me the code. And, as a result of that, with a bunch of prototypes, we started writing code and trying to, I'd say validate some of the assumptions we had. Like if we did X, is Y going to happen? It's going to be easier to add payment providers. Is it going to be easy to have subscriptions? Is it going to be faster? Is it going to be easy to maintain? Is it going to be easier for us to, like we did, like some of the UI architecture, et cetera, was like less load on the server. So it means we can actually run up checkout and hit the server a lot less. So there's a bunch of things like that I think was part of the prototyping phase. And then obviously a huge migration of things, right? A lot of people have customized checkout, and as part of this, we also made checkout extensible. So you might have seen some of the videos recently of like extensible checkout. You put fields different way. There's a branding API, et cetera. And
Like
that's
the
being kind of released now,
Supreme
right?
checkout looks exactly the same. It doesn't look,
It's pretty good, eh?
yeah, it doesn't look like, if you go to my sock store, the checkout is like most Shopify sites. I know the Staples site had something custom that might have been an early customer of this as well too.
Yeah,
But the
Staples had
Supreme one,
the old customization engine, but yes, Supreme has a new one.
yeah. So like for Supreme, I know what I call it, the Supreme experience. Like they want to keep it how they want to make the experience of Supreme being the same. So they didn't, I'm guessing they didn't want it to have the default checkout. And so that was one of their requirements. Again, that's my assumption. And does the component based system solve that for them?
What do you mean the component-based system?
Like they can have checkout, say, only on the back end, and then on the front, the form is, say, their own code, or as you said, it says new dynamic form fields, and it's still Shopify.
Oh, you're talking about the new Shopify components thing they
Yeah.
released. Mm. Yeah, listen, I'm not employed by Shopify anymore, so I can say what I want. I mean, most of that is marketing at this point.
Yeah.
Like a lot of
The
what.
press release is the very last thing that goes out. It's like you may work on this code for 4 years, and then finally the press release goes out, and that's the marketing piece.
Yeah, so I think that it's kind of a bundling of all the stuff that we've been working on for 10 years, right? Like a better checkout, better meta fields. I don't know what else was in there, like customizable things, etc. But fundamentally, it's just we're just providing unbundling parts of Shopify that they're available. And I feel like it's I mean, if you browse the source code and all that, you'll see it's just running on checkout.
Right.
Just highly, like they have more hooks to customize it, more hooks to brand it, etc. But it's a checkout platform that we've been working on forever, right? And as you said, like not everyone wants it, not everyone needs it. So I think some of the ideas around Shopify components was like we bundle a bunch of these things that maybe the top 1% of retailers actually need and want, and let's just give it a name.
Right.
So, but I mean, it's a lot of it's bundling of stuff that we've been working on for 10 years, and the team have been kind of finishing up now, which is great.
Okay, last question on Supreme. It was one I saw a conspiracy theory that Supreme switching to Shopify just so bots can take stock and then the resale market will stay high. So my question is, in your pitch to Supreme, did you say, hey, when you switch to Shopify, the resale prices of your items will go up?
I only had one request when we talked to Supreme, is I need my personal bypass for life. And they said, never.
Never. There you go.
I have no idea. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the emergence of anti-bot protection. Back in the day, 2016 to 2018 or so, it was kind of, if you talk to people, the bot community, it was kind of the botting golden age, both on the sneakers app and on Shopify itself. So there's very little anti-bot protection from what I can remember from back then. So really the growth happened around at that time, let's say late 2017, 2018 or so. It started with CAPTCHAs and checkpoint and all the way now to this domain switch kind of stuff that you do on some drops. So how did it come about? How did it come out that we have to do something about this to stop bots? Was it like
Shopify
merchant?
doesn't like Shopify, like one is the only pair of sneakers I've ever owned were like torn and used, and I've never been a sneaker guy. But what happened is, as you said, like 2017, 2016, I forget, like the Kanye age and when Yeezys came out and we started, the platform really was exploding, is I was at my kids' sporting events over the weekend and my phone was going off all the time. Servers were overheating. I was like, what the hell? Like, we're only selling 3,000 pairs. Like, why is there 5 million people on the sites? So I think we got pulled into this by necessity of protecting our servers. And I think before then we just, we've always had flash sales. Like we'd have like a Super Bowl ad for, I forget, like there was a Super Bowl ad and they built it. Or whoever won the Super Bowl one year did a t-shirt thing, launched on Shopify, crashed us. We're like, holy shit, that's what a thundering herd feels like on our servers. Cool. But we're like, okay, that happens once a year. Like, who cares? And then I think, as you said, 2016, it was actually happening once a week, 2018, once a day, et cetera, et cetera. So I think at that point, we're like, who's hitting our servers? And we're like, these are humans. Surprise, surprise, half the traffic on the internet, or probably more than half the traffic on the internet is boxies. And it's been that way for a while, but web crawlers, et cetera. But I think we hadn't necessarily seen it to that degree at Shopify. So while Shopify was very scalable and we could handle, we were always thought about like handling traffic. I think there was a step change in terms of what we're seeing. And then we're like, okay, this is not going away. We're going to have to become experts at this. And I think that's where we really, maybe I accidentally tweeted in 2016 that we're going to make it better for manuals. And I had no idea what I was getting into. And then got demolished online. And then there was a long journey from that to the New York Times, I guess was a 4-year journey. Yeah.
Um, how many times did bots take down the platform? I'm assuming at least
I mean,
it's not zero, is what I'm assuming.
like define takedown. I mean, I think
Where the 99% of the other merchants were affected, where their store was slow, where
not too often. Like we had a really good blast radius kind of protection, like the underwriting core architecture of Shopify is we could put merchants into pods, and after a while we had flash pods, which are merchants that are flashy in their own pods, and they didn't, if they uh, overheated, like the load balancers and database. I mean, a lot of it is database
so if
contention.
Virginia goes down, then AWS or whoever the provider is in California is still up.
Yeah, exactly. And we had that architecture kind of at the merchant level, so we could put, Kim Kardashian or Yeezy on their own pod. And but I mean, so we would have, I'd say, a pod like throttling going in place, like overheating almost pretty often, like that, because yeah, like we had a lot, like there's a lot of really hype stuff on Shopify, and people are trying to get them right. So I
Right.
think it would happen less and less every month as we got better, but it was definitely because we'd start shedding traffic. It's not just protection, but there's overload protection and shedding traffic and deciding on what you shed. Like it's kind of like you have circuit breakers, like you do have in a electrical system, right? You put circuit breakers in place at different places, and that kind of protects different things. Although you end up, shedding things, or circuit breaker turns the circuit off, so your hair dryer is not working, but it still protects the integrity of the system. We had a lot of those kind of circuit breakers in place to make sure we kind of protected the platform as a whole. But yeah, bots were extremely active on Shopify, and we knew about it, right?
Was it costing you money in that you had to, get more and more servers up, more and more, pods and data centers up?
I don't know, specifically that we wouldn't have to spend that money anyway because these were hype things that we're going to sell. I mean, that's the business we're in, right?
Right.
Was
That's what
was
a platform is.
That's what we're supposed to do. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, is it costing you money when you're running, AWS when there's really, spiky or popular applications that are running on it? No, that's what we want. That's what we built it for. We love it when there's very, very active things running on it. Like as engineers, like that was, I'm not building it for the boring stops that are selling $10 a day of socks. Now, I don't know how much you did in Sockjig, but we're building it
Doing
for
okay.
the exciting merchants who are stressing everything at the same time. Like we loved it, right? And I think the whole team did. And I think, and as I talked about like the F1 analogy a bit of, I think we loved that there was a lot of traffic coming, right? It forced us to really build things and think about, the architecture of Shopify, the operation of Shopify, and I think made us better quicker as a result of that. So in some ways it cost us money, but it also made us money because we got better quicker than anyone else could. So
Right.
it was, I think it was an investment that paid off like really quickly.
Question about merchants. So, in these times when these drops were botted, did merchants come to you and say, "Hey, our drop has been completely botted. What can you guys do?" Because the motives of merchants might not all be the same. One merchant might be totally fine with bots clearing out their stock, and another might be very upset about it. Was that like another driving force where you had to kind of do something because of high profile merchants
No, I
requesting
think
it?
we had a relationship with, high profile merchants. Like it's kind of like Supreme. Like there's a relationship. We talk to them and we're like, what kind of drop do you want? And it's not our decision. Like, they can turn on and turn off what they want. They can do what they want, and we collaborate on that. And but what I can tell you is every merchant cares a lot about how their drop goes from a customer experience. Like they want customers to have great
Or
experiences, and I think
perception?
we like yeah, and a lot of it is perception. I'm like, hey, all those screenshots on Twitter they're all photoshopped, they're fake. Everyone's flexing, whatever. Like, so I think we did probably have to teach people to read the room a bit
Yeah,
of what it's like.
I'm sure you
Like,
said
yeah, this is normal, right?
I'm sure you said in a meeting with a merchant that no one flexes the cancels, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or like,
um,
yeah, go just go cancel. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. No one flushes the cancels. Yeah.
So when a drop goes wrong, like the blame sometimes goes directly to the merchant because they're the one responsible for the drop, or it might go to Shopify. sometimes the blame's to go around because the stock itself might have been 24 pairs, for example, and the interest was, 1,000-fold or so.
Yeah, no one knows that. I mean, that's the other thing too, right? Of there's kind of like this game going where the sellers aren't telling you how many are available because they don't want to maybe skew or not everyone. They if they they said there's 2,000 pairs, people are like, I have time, I won't go right away. Like they just don't get as much hype. If they say there's 24, then everyone gets pissed off. So um,
I think Nike even says to merchants, do not tell
they
how
don't
many you
want they
have.
don't want people to say so. But I think that the challenge we have with kind of hype releases now is like it's the experience in some ways too, right? Like there's part of the experience, and I think merchants have to get really good at just engaging that community. And that's kind of what we want to do with the queue and a lot of the checkout of like if you don't get something, it should be as fun as if you got it. Okay, like maybe you don't get the chunky donkeys, but it has to be like that was good. I respect that I stood in line and I probably know they don't have it, but it was a good experience, right? And I think that's just a challenge we have in kind of these type environments is to not just look at those who get it, but look at like the majority aren't going to get it and what's it like for those who don't get it, right? And I think that was our goal with the queue is like tell people when it's out of stock so they can screw off and do something else and make sure that they know where they're at and like just it's kind of like when you're in a real queue, I can see where I'm at, right? Like a lot of this is just simulating if there's a million people in line at a store, like I can see where I'm at in the line. I can decide to stay or not, and I can and it's gonna be fun. I can talk with people around me, and maybe there's someone's gonna bring me some drinks, and like why not like just make it fun like that, right? I've always been inspired by what they do at Disney around, like they will have you stand in line for 3 hours, and everyone loves it, and they want to get back. Like okay, like what can we do around the whole purchasing experience where it's actually an experience, right? It's not just when you put your credit card in, but it's the whole thing and making that great. So, and I think that's the challenge that retailers have, and one of the things that I'm sure Shopify's going to keep working on, which is like evolving that and thinking about new ways of doing that.
Another question is like when a drop goes wrong, say Cyber or whoever, some bot figured it out and they took stock. I've talked about before. Any merchant who say has auto capture payments on is going to take a real hit canceling all those orders because of the penalties involved from credit card fees and stuff. So how did you guys deal with drops like that? Because I know there were, I'm not going to talk about specific drops because who can really remember the last 2 years, but how did you guys deal with that, dealing with drops like that where say Cyber had some sort of bypass that you guys hadn't patched?
I mean, outside of the servers crashing, like things would sell, right? So, yeah, merchants, we tell merchants to, as you said, it seems like you know your stuff, right? Would you do a manual capture, which is you don't charge the credit cards right away, which means you can run scripts and go, who bought this stuff? Start canceling orders, and then kind of clean up post sale in terms of like just seeing what's going on. So and I think merchants were obviously it's a bit more work to do that, but generally things would sell out. So outside, I mean, for us is we just have to keep the servers running and let people through. I think was the main thing. And sometimes, I mean, that's where things usually, where we'd be pissed if something happened, and as you said, there was a bypass. Like a bypass was just there's an API endpoint that some intern put in to check out that we didn't notice. Like stuff happens like that, right?
Yeah.
You have tests, and we're trying to make sure, but literally, it's like the intern puts an endpoint in that exposes the inventory account through the public API, or like there's just so much surface area to check out. Remember, I was saying how it's the glue of an e-com platform, and the glue means it glues like all of the storefront to all the back office data, right? Like inventory counts and payment providers and shipping rates and all. Like it has all that, and the possibility of something kind of going wrong there, either exposing it or having a new endpoint that doesn't check the doodly do flag and you get through. Like that stuff did happen once in a while, in which case, again, things would sell out, and we'd usually tell people to just we'd help them scrape their orders and look for dupes and look for things going to the same postal code, and like they would sometimes spreadsheet this and see kind of who bought stuff.
Why is the anti-bot feature only a Shopify Plus feature? Because there's a huge gap between paying $29 a month for kind of the basic Shopify plan and almost $2,000 a month for the Shopify Plus plan, which gets you the anti-bot features.
I mean, nobody who can't afford Shopify Plus needs bot protection. Like you're like at that point, if you can't afford Shopify Plus, then you're just trying to make as much money as you can. Don't like just sell out, right? You should be happy you're being botted,
Yeah.
And at a certain point, your brand's big enough where you're like, actually, I have to show I'm doing something because my brand's getting damaged because of botting or whatever. Then they care. So I think like, as you said, that not only people need this are hyped enough to need that. So I think it make perfect sense to be in Shopify Plus.
Yeah, I think an example of that was like Salehi Bembury, and he has these Crocs that he sells, and he would sell it on his own site, but he's not exactly the equivalent of, say, Undefeated or Livestock,
Mm-hmm.
which has stores in multiple cities, which is a reason to use a plus feature when you have multiple locations and things like that. Whereas when you don't have a store, but you're generating hype, and if you only have a couple drops a year, you're not going to exactly pay $2,000 a month for it. But I did see that he does use it, so evidently that is what you're saying. Like he got big enough where he can pay for it and has that protection now.
Yeah, I mean, or he got a favor, but yeah, it's. But yeah, most people can afford it if you're hyped, and I think, yeah. So I mean, listen, I'd love to find a model where we don't have features into plans, because I think, and this is just a meta topic of I'd always like to think that like any entrepreneur needs any feature to be successful. Our job at Shopify was to take this really hard thing, which is being an entrepreneur, and make it maybe a tad easier. And to do that, it's really hard for us to predict that a small one needs this and this, and a medium one needs this and this. Like, I think just a paper usage would have been really great, but it gets complicated, right?
Right.
Like usage for what, and how do you pay, and how do you track? And but I think like ultimately, I'd love more software to be pay per use, and not paper features.
Right.
So when you're smaller, if your business looks like a different shape, and you might need Shopify Flow, or you might need I forget what's another plan, like customizable checkout or whatever, like that. It's up to you to decide, right? And if you pay because you use a lot of bandwidth, you have a lot of images, you have a lot of thing, but I think like we looked into that, it gets complicated. But ultimately, I think we have to figure a way to do that, across the entire software industry. Like
Right.
it would be a lot better. And then we're not like, you're on the cusp of like, well, I'm kind of bigger, but if I pay $1,000 or 2,000, I just want this one feature. Like, just go, actually, like, I think, yeah, software is there to make people successful, and I think we have to figure out how to get as much software and as much of the product into as many people's hands as possible, and then I think that's kind of success. But I think it's just complex to make that happen, and something as complex as Shopify. But it was something I always tried. I always had in mind, like if I stayed long at Shopify, it was something I was trying to figure out a solution to that. Haven't yet, but. Yeah, that would have solved the problem. So if if you have a Croc sale and you want to turn on all the bells and whistles, then so be it.
I know, like in driving, they say you can one day in the future we'll be paying for how much we drive on the streets, and so it'd be the same kind of thing, pay per use. So like if you had a big drop in, you have
Yeah.
all the bells and whistles. The other question I have basically about the platform is like, how do you decide what goes into the platform and what doesn't? And what I'm getting to is I know like things like VIP programs, I've seen merchants have that, and that is something that the platform supports. But one thing notably the platform has not supported fully, completely is Raffles. Why is that? Why weren't Raffles ever integrated into the platform where multiple merchants can have that?
Yeah. So I think your first question was just like, how do you decide what goes on the platform? And that's the number one problem that a growing company has, because there's a certain point in your company when you start it up, you're kind of like, you're trying to find customers, and that there's hit a certain point where you don't die of starvation, but you die of indigestion, which is you have just so a startup starting dies of starvation. I don't have enough customers, right? And then you at a certain point you hit a kind of like a tipping point where you have too many customers. There's never too many, but you know what I mean, right? That you
Right.
have just a lot of them, and everyone's asking for stuff. So our jobs as kind of technologists and product builders is to kind of understand where our vision's going, understand what we're hearing from our customers, and then sequence it over the 10 years in a sequence that made sense, that both matches kind of the evolution of the software. I told you, like, the great thing about software development is the evolutionary part of us evolving it. So you have to match that with the right things, right? And doing something before before the technology can even do it, like, doesn't make sense. So that's that's one of the hardest things we have to do, right? And often what we do in terms of deciding that is just seeing how many times, like reference counting, and how many times are we hearing that thing, right? Does it make sense, and does it make sense with our business model? And if you think about like Shopify, just a really good example, right? We used to call it, like, are you adding something to the platform that's like additive, or are you building a completely new platform, right? A new construction site almost, where it's like,
Right.
so for us, it's like the features that I think were really related to physical commerce were really, really important for us. Things like people push us to go into service industry and do like why can't you use Shopify to run my hairdresser and do like scheduling and accounting? Like, there's just so many kinds of businesses you can run, and you're like,
Right.
well, why is that not on the platform? And why can't I have a calendar and schedule things? We're like, well, listen, we had an API, you can build if you want, but it's not core to Shopify. Like, our core premise was physical commerce.
Right.
And that was a bit of our guiding light in terms of what platform things we did. And then we just sequence them every year, going, okay, what are we seeing? What are we hearing? Where do we want to go? And then we, let's make these, 5 to 8 bets every year. I think our API was a really good release valve. Whenever we said no, we were kind of saying no, not in core Shopify, but yes, you could probably band-aid it with our API. Hence, like the investment in Metafields now and Meta Objects is really important, because it means that you can kind of build more on Shopify that's not in core, right? It becomes really like an operating system where, like, if you
A
look at
developer
the
can make
Linux
a
kernel or
Raffle
whatever,
extension.
yeah, like the developer can build a raffle that checks it, and you can now with the subscription API. I actually launched a video that showed how to do that, and we took it down because I forget, some lawyer told me to take it down, but it's possible to do it now. We had vaulting and all this other stuff, but it's not called the Raffle API, right? It's just,
Right.
you just know what kind of primitives you want to use. So, sorry, long-winded answer to, it's one of the most interesting challenges that you have in a growing company. But and I think over time you want to create a platform and a product where not everything has to be in core, like, because we can't be the throttle, right, of things. It's kind of like, as I was trying to get to, like Microsoft Windows, like, it has the game engine, it doesn't have all the games in it,
Right.
and I think that's kind of the vision about, or what we're trying to build.
And Shopify is in the business of enabling checkouts to, like we said, 99.9% of merchants, and not in the business of stopping checkouts for those merchants, but only for the other, the 1% or 0.1% of the bot stuff that we're talking about here. And I think that's where Raffles kind of falls in. Where the Flash stuff kind of matches up with a Ferrari in the metaphor we were using, whereas the Raffle one does not. So that's probably
Mm.
why I'm assuming it kind of fell off.
Yep. I mean, yeah, exactly.
Okay, one last question about the platform is there a platform-wide ban list? I've always said there is not. You can't get banned on Shopify, and this kind of follows the same along the lines, because people assume that I'm going to get banned on this store, I'm going to get banned on Shopify. That is not the case, right?
Well, what you mean banning? Like, on, like, a buyer, like through checkout, or you mean as a merchant?
Like, say I bought something on Undefeated, and Undefeated has banned me,
Oh, I
and
see.
now everything is canceled
Mm.
from now on. I'm free to check out on any other site, though, right? It's not like Shopify has blacklisted me. Undefeated may have blacklisted me.
Depends. I mean, definitely. Um, I said we had circuit breakers on Shopify, which is, if we see shit, we're allowed to protect the platform. And I think, definitely, like, IP ranges or things that we're seeing, or if you're doing shit, we would definitely throttle it, and whether that throttle lasts for a minute or a month, like, we definitely have that in place. But I think, over time, like, there's kind of no point in holding a blacklist, because people are just going to go around it anyway. But we do
Right.
short burst circuit, like, I'd call it circuit breaker, like throttling.
Yeah, makes sense.
And if you're doing something stupid, we remember what you look like, as in IP address, location, browser, blah blah blah, like all that other stuff, all the metadata you can get through requests, and then we go, we're going to put you in the naughty list for a while.
Right. So I want to talk about your kind of role that you kind of had on Twitter with bot developers. I jokingly called you like this ombudsman or ambassador when you were talking with. You're very friendly with bot developers online, and I think it was alarming to some of them, and a lot not alarming to others, like Lucas from CyberSoul that you mentioned. So how did that come about? Was that just because of you and your personality, or was that like strategic? Were you faking it is what I'm asking.
It was really weird. Like it was like the perfect storm of things that happened. So one, bot developers interrupted my weekends all the time, so it pissed me off.
At the soccer game, getting text.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Number two is at that time, like my son was, end of high school. His friends were over and they were all botting sneaker releases in my kitchen. Like I was like, why are you guys up at 8 Like you guys never get up that early. Oh, there's a sneaker launch. I'm like, oh really? That's it. Like teach me about this stuff, right? So I had a personal connection as my kids and their friends were buying sneakers because that was kind of the age group. So I was like, I was learning. I was like, that's cool. And three is, I think, as I said, like I think I wanted Shopify to be experts in hyped things, and for us to do that, you kind of have to get your hands dirty and understand what it's like. And um, there was no explicit I want to join sneaker Twitter. Like I didn't know it. As I said, I tweeted, I got some reactions, and then um, I definitely got a lot of intel from doing that. A lot of people DM'd me about stuff, and it ended up being, after a couple of years of that, me and the team, like we knew a lot about sneakers and bots, and I think we got better by learning from the community, and it turns out it's and then the fourth thing is it turned out it's a bunch of really smart people. I ended up hiring a bunch of people who were like, "Man, you're really good like these are just some really good developers. There's some
Right.
really shitty ones, but some really good developers." Because, as I said, like an hour ago, about when I was trying to use CyberSoul, like it's like to bot well, you've got to know how the internet works. You got to keep up with the platform. You have to build a performant, a platform. Like it's pretty involved. So I think it helped with recruiting. It helped, and it also like I'm getting at that age where like I love to pass on to the next generation and create a bit of excitement around what we're doing. And if people saw me get excited about the technology around this, and how fun I was having in my job, even like it was fun. Like I love doing this right stuff. It was fun, and I'm a bit of a shy. Like I've always been the guy in the corner at the party. I'm not a bit of a shy guy. I might like so for me, internet nativeness is like it's easier. Like I can
Yeah.
hide behind my tweet a bit. Like I don't do a lot of YouTube like the video stuff for me is almost too intimate. Like
Yeah.
it just fit kind of my personality, and I'm a bit of a joker, and a bit of I'm the joker that is gets kicked out of class kind of thing, and
I was
the
saying,
nerd joker kind of stuff. So it kind of my personality maybe fit that community at that point in time.
yeah, it was clear you're having fun with it as well too, and rolling with the punches when things did go wrong, and not overly flexing when you guys did stop bots as well too. Um, my question also about that was like, were you ever worried about how it would appear to other tech executives, to other, C-suite people that you were friend, or even to merchants as well, that you were, hobnobbing with botters and bot developers and things like that? Were you ever worried about that I need to compartmentalize this a bit?
No, like I don't know. At a certain point, you just don't give it. I don't give a shit about what other people think. Like I was really convinced, and I mean, and I think everyone at Shopify knew that like we got like Shopify got a lot better, and I learned a bunch out of doing this. And you know, like I think most execs suck at their job because they don't want to get their hands dirty.
Yeah.
And I promised myself I never want to be that boring, non-fun in the clouds exec who talks jibbly boo and has no idea what's going on. Like that's not my personality. It's not my type. And so for me, maybe it was just making sure I kept having fun and learning in my job. Like that was kind of part of it. And in some ways, I think maybe Elon Musk is maybe doing a bit too much of it, but I think you've got to engage with your community. And I
Yeah.
think, I mean, I there's a lot of customers we landed in my that slid into my DMs. And I'm talking about celebs. They're
Yeah.
like, "Hey," I'm like, "Oh, how do you know me?" It's like, "Well, this person on my team is following me on Twitter, and like, we're gonna move to Shopify." I'm like, "Okay," so out of all this, I became a salesperson for Shopify, which was definitely not in my job description. But so I'm like, how could that be a bad thing? Now
It's a
I can definitely
results-based
see, like, I think
business.
it's absolutely, and I think it's a new way of, I'm engaging with our customers and with our merchants, at the same time. And um, yeah, I'm sure people thought about, like, what you just asked me right now about, like, that's not like typical exec stuff, and maybe you're like, people saw you as not as serious. And I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like, we're shipping good stuff, and I was having a blast, and at that point, that's all that mattered.
Were you checking in code? Because I know in some tech companies, once you go onto the management track, you kind of get your Git access revoked, or but every company is different. Were you checking in code, or are you just kind of checking in with teams that were working on this kind of stuff?
There's a lot of checking in. I mean, I think my team was 4,000 people when I left, so it's that's a lot of people. You don't want me in the critical path, but I'm always coding. So I'd say I code in a lot of, like, our experiments, like new stuff, like, like we were doing a lot of React Native work a bunch of years ago to decide if we're going to move all our mobile apps. And I'd be either helping with the team doing the prototype or build my own apps. Uh, all new APIs that came out of Shopify, I was always trying them out. I always built my own Shopify apps. But as a CTO in a you know in any high growing company, there's a lot going on. Like, you can't be the critical path for coding, but I think you have to stay in touch with the code. And I read a lot of code. Like, I'd love to read, like, the PR of the day, going like, send me great PRs I can look at.
You were in the
And
code reviews.
well, I want to learn, right? I want to recognize developers doing great jobs, because that's like really important to me. Like, I love to see great code and great ideas and it come to life. And it's also my job to just sanity check that we're building things in good ways. There's some consistency, et cetera. And it's just fun to code too. But definitely not. No one took away my Git commit rights, although I knew where not to screw around with.
They knew to double check in case you did.
I'm sure there must have been some flag or warning flag that if there was a commit into the core, that they'd auto reject it.
And along the lines, in the past, I think I said something like, a CTO has a lot of responsibilities, and anti-bot development is just one tiny feature. And so it didn't seem like to me that you were doing all of your day-to-day on just anti-bot stuff. How much of the
Oh
time,
man,
how much of it did it?
anti-bot stuff. And so I'd say flash sales and our big merchants was a big part, because I think like, the platform was good for the route, like, for the board, like, for the easy merchants, kind of things worked. And I think as an engineer, you kind of get pushed by your more complex and bigger merchants. So I spent a lot of time with those merchants. Now, it's not all about just flash sales and bots, right? It's about inventory management.
Right.
It's about, like, the headless work. It's about API design. It's about, more flexibility and extensibility on the platform. Like, was where I was spending the
Subscriptions.
time. Like, subscriptions, I talked about,
Yeah.
extensibility. Like, there's Shopify Function, Shopify Flow. Like, we're doing a lot of work around just, like, flexibility in the platform, spending a huge amount of time on that. Now, bots was like 0.5% of all of this, like, in the grand scheme of things. Now, on Twitter, maybe it looked like it was more substantial, but I think behind the scenes, it was really, there was a lot more involved in that. And as you said, like, as CTO, there's a lot of responsibilities. I mean, as a software dev in any company, like, I hate the term CTO. CTO is basically just, you're just software dev, and you just have a lot of responsibilities. But you have to keep the code running every day. You've got operations of it. You have security. We have compliance. We had SOX 2. We had just a lot of and you have to develop it. You have to keep the things running. You have to look at all the new features that are coming. You have to hire people like that. There's a lot to be done
Also,
there, and that's it's fun, man.
sorry, I was going to say, also, an executive on the development side shields their team a lot from product decisions, product managers, things like that. So, like we were talking about earlier, that when you're talking about with Toby, where you saw the vision of the Ferrari car, like those kind of discussions and decisions, and there might be, in some companies there might be friction, in other companies there might run smooth, right? So it's like you have a lot of
There's always friction. There's no, if anyone tells you the company runs smooth, like, they're the biggest BSer you've ever heard. Right? There's always friction, and
I didn't want to
it's
assume
kind of
about
like,
Shopify, so I tried to cover my tracks here.
oh yeah, of course,
Yeah.
yeah. There's always friction. I mean, I think as I said, when you're in that phase of the company where indigestion's going to kill you, have too many things to do, I think there's a lot of friction in terms of deciding, what do you work on, right? And I think great teams know how to have those hard conversations and, be data informed and have a vision and know what makes sense, like know where you're going and make sure that the things that you're going to be doing are going to help you get there. Like that, like it's not, maybe I didn't want to make it sound like it was easy
Yeah.
and smooth, but it definitely wasn't. Absolutely not. Like a lot of debate. And I think that's what makes great teams that can do that and still be friends.
Right now, botting is a bit down because of the market is not backing it up. If a lot of sneakers resell, then there's
I
more
was wondering
reason.
about that. So it is down, like the prices are going down, and I haven't tracked it much since.
The botting market is completely different. But yeah,
Okay.
a lot of prices are going down. They're more available. Some have closed
So
up
it's a good
shop.
time. Is it a good time to buy those Tom Sachs sneakers then?
there probably are only like $50-$80 above retail. The new ones that came out, not
No,
the
the old. What's the Mars? I want to buy
Mars
those.
Yard 2.0.
The
Those
Mars
ones are probably
Yards.
still like 4 or 5 grand Canadian, I
Oh,
think.
are they?
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, let me know when they're cheaper.
I
I
have
want
a
to get a
pair
pair.
here somewhere. Sorry.
You have a pair?
Yeah.
Well, what size are they?
They are
What
size
size?
12, and I bought them
Man.
in
Okay.
2017 for 700 US. And I told people on my Twitter when I probably had like 400
Wow.
followers, buy this shoe. It's going to be over 1,000 very soon. And there's
Well,
a few
yeah, good
people
on you.
that followed up and did that. And now I know they thank me.
I love that sneaker. It's the sneaker for engineers, So
Yeah.
it's. I thought it'd be very yeah. Is that what you're giving me for this podcast? I
I
forget
was going to ask you
what we
for,
negotiated.
I was going to ask you for a
Okay.
pair of Tiffany's.
Oh yeah.
um,
Do you have those too? Do you have a pair of
I do
Tiffany's?
not have those ones.
Okay.
No. So my question was, I've always said on the podcast before that someone who's working 9 to 5 as an anti-bot developer over time is going to beat these bot developers who are decrypting in the middle of the night when a new release comes out. That the 9 to 5 version who's got vacation is much more sustainable than bot developers. And I know bots come and go, and some are very stable, like CyberSoul. But I was wondering your thoughts on that. I'm assuming you're going to be on the side of the 9 to 5 anti-bot developer, but in your dealing with it, what have you seen and how you've dealt with it?
I mean, I'm not sure I think the internet's proved that there's creativity in every inch and quarter of this planet, right? And I think, in some ways the 9 to 5s might be the ones who aren't paying attention as well,
Right.
right? And so I think there's a market. If there's a way to make money, then people are going to spend money on it, or money as in their time. And I'm paranoid as hell. Like it's the same thing, like security, and like someone's going to hack you at any point in time. Like there's what 8 billion humans now on this planet with I don't know
Right.
5 billion with internet access or 7 billion, and someone's going to try and do it. So I think my approach is there's a huge amount of creativity. Um, I think as a company, like at some point you have people who maybe they care, but it's a 9 to 5 job, right? Are they really reading all the Twitter threads, being in the discords? Are they really in do they have the pulse of some of these like niche communities where some of the creativity is coming from? Like
Yeah.
it is hard to build a company where everyone has that motivation and kind of passion. So I think that's why you're seeing right now, right? There's amazing hacks happening all over the place, right? And people being creative and doing that. So I think that's going to keep going on.
So final few questions here. I have to ask this. Could Shopify have stopped Zadeh Kicks?
Interesting question. Not sure. I don't like I think that's still in the courts. That hasn't been solved yet, so I can't comment on that.
Okay.
I prefer not to get involved in like he said, she said of could they've done something. I think
Yeah.
he obviously on purpose, knowing the risks he was taking, did a lot of things that hurt a lot of people. And I think if anything's to like he anything like merchants on the platform, like they run the business, right? They own the decisions. They own what kind of business they want to run, et cetera. And I think he has like the bulk of the blame here for sure.
Because I think like on the platform, and I think this, Zadeh Kicks aside, I think consignment sneaker shops have the same issue where if they want to set up a Shopify store and have Shopify payments to take money in, they might get an email saying, we need proof from you that you are an authorized reseller of these products. Otherwise, we can't accept you on the platform. Is that a Shopify requirement? Is that a Stripe or payment processing requirement? How does that kind of go?
Yeah, it is. I mean, a lot of these are like infrastructure requirements, like Visa, Mastercard, and Stripe. Right? There's a lot of risk mitigation in terms of theft and fraud and all that. So yeah, that's just standard credit card processing risk mitigation things. And I've no like I even like listen, I wasn't there when Zadeh kind of went down and all that, and I'm not sure the specifics of it, but yeah, platforms do. You have some regulatory requirements in terms of checking some certain things, right? But
So, final question here. I was going to ask, what do you see as your next gig going to be, as your next tech executive one, once you're finished consulting and the other projects that you're working on?
yeah, well, I think one of the startups I'm working with, I think could really take off. So Dream Team OS, we're building this product called Kata. But if I had to like gun to my head take a job right now, I feel like Ticketmaster CTO might need me the most.
Wow.
What do you think?
I think it'd be a great job for you as a Ticketmaster CTO.
Okay, so let's play an imaginary role playing game. Imagine I had that job. Uh, what do you think I should be doing my first month on the job?
I think
'Cause I hear I hear the bots are on fire in Ticketmaster these days.
a lot of it would go back to your ombudsman role that I was joking about, because a lot of people see Ticketmaster as like, evil ticket co company. So undoing that would, I think, require more than one person. But I think you're definitely capable and shown that you could be a friendly face on that. And then the next one would be to, like, how do you solve this problem of tickets, of demand, of the venues and requirements and stuff. So what are your plans? What have you thought about that?
I don't know, maybe just implement a Dutch auction.
Dutch auction.
Yeah, go look it up. I think that might work. But
I think
anyway,
StockX has done it
we're
as
we're
well
just
too.
have they done it already?
Yeah.
Anyway, hypothetical. It sounds like an interesting thing at some point, but and might be a good continuation. But I'm not looking at this point. So, but hey, maybe we can do it together.
Sounds good.
I'll let you know.
Jean-Michel Lemieux, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your time with Sneaker Twitter and everyone else as well. I hope you get your
It was my
Mars
pleasure.
yards. I hope you give away
Yeah, I
more
do. Yeah.
Tiffany dunks.
Oh, that was fun. That was fun. That was made someone really happy. And yeah, nice to finally meet you, Sockjig. We've been. I saw you online for the last couple of years, and you had really good takedowns of what we're doing, and really respected kind of your technical acumen and all that. So glad to be here, and thanks for the chat.
Thank you so much. See you next time. So that was a lot of fun. Thank you to Jean-Michel Lemieux once again for joining me, aka JM Wind. We learned a lot from the interview. We learned that it took almost 4 years to land Supreme as a client. And we learned how dealing with bots made Shopify both better and quicker, and how they approached Shopify as a platform, and how flash sales were important, and also how bots could potentially cause security issues and take down the entire platform or a good chunk of it. And for the question of why is bot protection only available to Shopify Plus members, JM Win's answer was basically a diplomatic version of get your money up. And we also learned how, things like Raffles were not implemented into the platform because most merchants don't need it. And something like that opens up the space for others in the marketplace to create their own solution, like we've been seeing recently with a company like EQL doing Raffles for Atmos and Extra Butter and others. I had to ask about Zadeh Kicks, but I had a feeling we wouldn't get much of an answer, but I had to ask. And then finally, the last question, the Ticketmaster question. I would have liked to explore that if we had a bit more time, but we were running up against the clock, so I kind of left it as is. But most of all, the key thing that we learned is that you should go fuck yourself.